Hi, there's an old precept in the spiritual circles about if you, those that say don't know, those that know don't say. And I subscribe to that, but today I want to talk to them a little bit because I think it's very important. Adyashanti was the first one that I found who was willing to share what his journey through awakening was and what to expect, and it really helped me a lot because I just couldn't find anything else, and I felt like, Adya, thank you, and I've been following in his footsteps, but I want some caveats. I want to explain some things, and when the timing is correct, to be able to share your awakening, share your spiritual state, share your not wisdom, live the Dharma. Okay, so leading up to the awakening experience, I've talked about that a lot. And I've also talked about that when, I want to mention here that the split second that you are awakened to the unknowable becomes known. When you're awakened to the lack of separation and division, and that all is one, and that all is just an expression of the same thing, and nothing is lost and nothing is gained. It takes new forms, for sure, just like energy. Energy is energy. Spirit is spirit. And energy can be used, but it doesn't die. It's renewed. It's expressed in another sense. It's transferred, I guess, is the good word. And so the second that, this is with 2020 hindsight, looking back, okay? Because that's all I can do at this point. The events that I'm sharing have already unfolded. But I found out, much to my consternation, sometime later, that the second that you're awakened, at least to the unity, we call that the state of the lover, when you're able to start living the Dharma. You're in the state of the lover. You love life, you love yourself, you love, and from this love comes compassion, and you love all sentient beings, and you're compassionate to all sentient beings. But we're never without a challenge, okay? Your spiritual ego pops up. You've already discarded the old ego, the little e, the little I, and you became part of the big I, the I am. Here comes, it's insidious, it's sneaky, and it's definitely on a higher level, but it's still spiritual ego. And that's what makes it so tough. In my case, when I went through my 3-day experience of the process of awakening, I couldn't wait to share with those I thought at my inner circle, those that would understand. But of course, they didn't understand. They wanted to look to their teacher, my teacher, the teacher we had in common, and look for him for validation. They went to him and said, "Hey, did Hayam wake up really or not?" And he told them no. While at the same time, he looked at me and goes, it took me a really long time to figure out what was going on. Because honestly, at that point, I needed his validation, and I thought mistakenly that he wasn't supporting me. He didn't recognize my awakening. And I thought this meant, good effort, keep it up. And anyway, yeah, that's another story. But and all the handful of people I shared it with really didn't believe me. And that's what I had to come to learn as an infant Buddha. I had to mature. And you mature into a state where, number one, you never need validation. Number two, you don't need to be recognized. You don't care who believes you because you know. That's the litmus test. You will know if it's a false awakening, if it's a temporary awakening, it's a non-abiding awakening. You'll know that it's a permanent abiding awakening. You'll know. No ifs, ands, or buts. But here's what I want to caution you with. Keep it to yourself if it's possible. And look for the subtle footprints of a spiritual ego. And the sure signs of a spiritual ego, which I went through. And nobody warned me this. I had to discover, like everything else, I had to discover it on my own. And ultimately, you'll have to discover it on your own. But maybe this sharing, just as Adyashanti helped me some, maybe my sharing will help those when their time comes. But you want to keep your cards close to the vest, as poker players say, right? Don't show your cards. Don't claim to be awakened, even though that you've known it to be so. Remember that you're born as an infant Buddha, and you have to mature into your Buddhahood. And if it's in your fractal, your inner self, your higher self, your spirit guides, the Buddha within, will all let you know that it's okay to share now. You've been living the Dharma long enough. You caught that sneaky last trickster, the spiritual ego, where you feel better than anyone else because, hey, I got it. I got it. You don't. But then before you're able to share, you have to be taken down a notch, okay? And taking it down a notch, I mean, to spot the spiritual ego and squash it, and let it die. Just as you had to let your personal, your little I, or your little e in ego die. Recognize the falsity. Recognize that it's an illusion. Recognize that it's a karma. And this last one, the spiritual Buddha, trust me, it's a tricky bugger. And it'll fight you tooth and nail until even the spiritual ego surrenders. And this happens when, number one, you surrender. You become humble in the true sense of the word. And most importantly, this will help you to recognize just how ordinary you are. This is the birthright. This is the common condition of all, is to live in a state of joy, to be awakened, to remember the forgotten, to live the Dharma. This is in all of our trajectory, in all of our paths. The time will come. You can't rush it. It'll be there when it's there. But I'm going to caution you about this. Don't run out and tell the world, because number one, nobody will believe you. And number two, it just means basically that you're not secure. I wasn't secure because I was in the infant Buddha state. And I didn't know that. I just remember waking up like a little naked foundling and a little naked baby on a cold, dirty sidewalk and a gray sky. Looked like the pits of hell after the fire had been extinguished, and utterly alone, more alone than I've ever been. And when you're born in this life, hopefully, you have someone to nurture you, whether it's your blood parents or your adopted parents, or someone will look after your needs. But the baby Buddha, as far as they know in their infant state, of course, the higher self is there. Of course your spirit guides are there. But they have to be hands off. They have to let you mature. They have to let you fight for your life. Fight for your Buddhahood. Struggle. Learn. Grow. Mature. And like I said, I've been at the point since I started this journey with my sharing on YouTube. And by the way, this is my 301st video. So, not counting this one, I have 33 remaining, my magic number. 33 remaining, and I'll hit 333. And then this is done for me. This is done for me. I'm going on to other things, but it's been an interesting 2-year ride to share and create these videos. It's a documentation. If nothing else, if no one ever watches this, it doesn't really matter to me, because it's a documentation for me to help me to go back through my process and listen to that. I went back to my earlier videos and thought, wow, it still stands the test of time. It still stands all the progress that I've made, all the new wisdom that I've gained, all the experiences, all my 8 years since I was awakened, and growing into a mature Buddha to the point where I can share. Been living the Dharma, the teachings, been a living example. But I want to share, even though we all know that words fail, the real transmission of the Zen message, the Buddha's message, is internal. You have to discover it yourself. Isn't that grand? You can't rely on anybody else. Just rely on yourself. I think that's wonderful. It couldn't be any other way. So now I want to go back and share some things, because today I'm talking about the Hall of the Buddhas. And this was a great experience for me. The first time that I attended, I was granted the privilege of wearing a purple shirt, and they placed me in the front row center. At that time, I had no understanding of how important that particular position was, because basically Sifu's message was, his focus was directly on center row, first row center. So I was blessed. But after this meditation, and it's funny, he put me next to also 2 English-speaking teachers, because the first 3 rows were reserved for people he had chosen to share his knowledge. They call them teachers. Really a big deal to the teachers. They all had inflated egos. I'm important, just as I had the same sense. I understand as waking up is just first taking my first breath as an awakened being, and I feel full of myself too. So I'm not talking down about them, because I know this experience, and I've been fortunate enough to take it one step further. What's that bump there? Take it one step further to recognize that there's a spiritual ego. But after he spoke some, and the people around me wanted to translate, and I already knew at that time. I said, pay attention. You guys pay attention to your message. Never mind, I'm okay. I can understand on another level. I can feel the communication. They call it inshin, heart to heart. I can feel this. So you guys relax. Don't translate this for me. Don't feel obligated. Because words don't. I already knew that words didn't matter. It's more about the feeling. So I want to be in the feeling, and I wanted to. He was sharing his words for them. Because he knew he wasn't sharing it with me, because he's speaking Chinese, and he knew I didn't speak any. He knew. So this was for them. I said, this is for you. Listen. because he's a man of few words most of the time. And then we had a meditation. After the meditation, he called somebody to come get me, and he wanted me to come up in his area, and he put his hand on my forehead and just left it there for a while. Well, I was transported to this bright golden indigo, surrounded by gold, indigo, and deep blue. So deep blue, indigo, and golden surrounded this huge room where tens of thousands of beings were seated. And now let me tell you, it was, as I walked in, I have to tell you, it's pretty overwhelming because number one, there was beings of all colors, and all shapes, and all sizes, and all forms, and just it was a Star Wars bar kind of a scene. And then there was, people that I could recognize and more as a human being. They looked physically. They took on it's a light body because there was no being in there, even myself, that was in a physical body. But gee, I saw, androgynous, that you can't tell if they're male and female. I saw obviously gay ones. Obviously, but both, female and male. Obviously, to me, there was the androgynous people, which is a mixture of everything, and that was quite a bit. And then there was other people that still were living, as I've come to understand, our personality persists. And if they'd been gay in several previous lives, that's part of their personality, and they brought it with them into this personality persists. Jesus had a personality, has a personality. I've come to know even in my Buddhahood that I too have a personality. Of all things to persist, and this is the reincarnation, is the personality, as well as the karma, of course. The karma helps you determine the best conditions, the best parents, the best conditions, the best time, the best country, the best planet for you to be born on, so that you can resolve and balance out your karma. So here I am in this hall. And of course there's sound. And I watched, I could hear Bagua. It was a language I didn't know, but I see people talking. Almost all of the human activities that you could imagine. But they were all more or less seated. All of them were golden. The beings themselves were golden. Okay. And this stretched on forever. And I just have to say that I was in awe of being in this presence of all these Buddhas, but the diversity. I thought everybody looked like the Buddhas that we picture, the Buddhas that we make a statue, and I really didn't see anybody that looked anything like that. And what they did, when they did pay some attention to me, was all they just said is welcome. Welcome, Hai Young. Welcome amongst us. Come sit with us. And that was it. That was it. And that was way more than enough to be welcomed into the hall of the Buddhas, even to take even that short amount of time to recognize me. All of them gave me the bow of recognition, the bow of respect. And after that, and of course I just kind of sit there because, remember, I haven't had my awakening experience yet. So I didn't really understand how I was being recognized, accepted and recognized, and being invited into the hall to sit with them when it really wasn't my time yet. But at that very moment, obviously I had no doubt that I must be close. Sifu had already told me I was close. It's been a bodhisattva for the last few lifetimes. As the ninth layer below the 10th, which is becoming a Buddha. But I got accepted and recognized, and it seemed premature because I felt like kind of an imposter, honestly. After I got over my overwhelm, I said, I don't really belong in their presence, much less to be acknowledged and accepted. But then I just was overwhelmed. The way that they communicate is just waves of energy and light. And I became assured at that time that I was very close, or I wouldn't have been able to have this experience. And honestly, I've never heard anyone else speak of this experience. So I'm sharing this as my unique experience. And then Sifu removed his hand. Sifu is my teacher. He removed his hand, and I'm back amongst the living with all my crinkles and wrinkles and shortcomings, but with a big smile on my face. And Sifu he was stern looking, like I am like that. But when we smile, when he smiles and I smile, he saw my smile and he smiled back. And it's a beautiful smile, and I hope my smile can be 1/10 as beautiful as his is. So here I am. And at first I couldn't get my footing. I remember I kind of stumbled a little bit, and Sifu reached out and grabbed my shoulders and just held me for a minute, and then just looked at me, probably asked me in Chinese, am I okay? And eventually later he had me share this experience with, I remember the hall would have 4,000 or 5,000 people, and I went to every center that he had at that time, and I shared in front of thousands of people. I shared this experience because Sifu asked me to. So I had a unique opportunity at that time. I didn't know how unique, to travel with him, to sit near him, to eat with him, to go in the same little preparation room that he has. I have to share a story. Okay. He walks fast. When he gets to a train station, number one, he has a circle of protection that I'm beginning to understand. He has his Shizhongs and Shishes, the sisters and brothers that form a circle, and his bodyguards that are trained in martial arts, and they lead him through. But he's fast, and I had to keep up. I mean, I'm a turtle, right? I'm a slow walker. I'm slow at everything. If you ask Colleen, my wife, she'll tell you, you're too slow. Yeah, I'm slow. Except my mind is fast. But my body, my actions, my reactions are really good. Fast, like a cat. But my physical action, my walking, my steps. So I had to push myself to keep up. We went down to Haiyang University. It's down south near Kaohsiung, Ocean University. And my Chinese name was Haiyang, so it seemed appropriate. The first place that I went was Haiyang University. And after getting on, we get off the train, rush, and somebody's waiting, and they whisk us away in a car. The entourage takes several cars and whisk us away, take us to the venue. This was Haiyang University. Take us into a small room, which is his preparation room, where he gets ready to let the people come in, he's there always first, before the official time and before they start letting people in. He's already there. He's having his tea, probably gathering his thoughts, gathering his energy to remove the karma from all the people that will be in the room, that overwhelming job. But I remember he motioned me into the room first. And there was already some people, there always is his attendants, some people already were in the room. So I came in and I just flopped down on the couch, one of the couches, I just flopped down. And I looked around me and everybody's standing and bowing and they're kind of aghast. They just, you don't flop down before the master is seated. You stand in respect. You don't even sit unless you're invited. Here I just flopped down. And I looked at him, sorry. And he said, no, just sit. He just laughed it off. But I tell you, if you looked at the faces on the people, it was just like they were awestruck. I said, what is this crazy Adoga? Oh, that's Dai, that's Taiwanese for Waigaran, foreigner. What is crazy Magaran American do? And then why was Sifu so accepting? Because he's a stern taskmaster, He doesn't tolerate any nonsense. He will call. Those closest to him suffer most from his almost wrath. He'll knock them down a peg. And here I am. Flop down. Ar's akimbo. And I look up and I realize where I am and what I'm doing, and I just was aghast, even though I saw the faces of 10, 12 people surrounding in a deep bow, not even daring to make eye contact with him. And I'm looking at him, sorry dude, sorry man. And he just, I started giving, just rest. So then I went into the hall, and I was invited up onto the stage. There's always an elevated stage. I was invited up to the stage, and Sifu has a place that's slightly more elevated than the people on the stage. And at that time I was, 30 kilos heavier than I am now. And I was sitting on a cushion, trying to keep straight, sitting for his introduction and for a beginning meditation before I was invited to come and speak. We'd already had a meditation, so probably half an hour of sitting there. And I got up and I couldn't get my legs under me. I stumbled, I didn't fall down, but I stumbled just 10, 12 feet. I just kind of trying to get my balance back, trying to get my legs had gone to sleep, trying to get the blood back in them. And everybody was just kind of, didn't know what to do. And Sifu said, hey, remember, hey, help him. And then, of course, I was going to say all hell broke loose, but so much activity. Everybody was surrounding me and making sure. And by then I'd already gotten my balance, But and I talked, and I remember just how easy it was, and how much fun. I really had fun. And I shared about the Hall of Buddha, but I also shared talking about having experienced a center for Sifu in the future, where he always came to us. He traveled from center to center. Sifu always traveled to visit his practitioners. And I envisioned this beautiful place, and where this was music, and this path, winding path, and little fountains, and this big, beautiful white building with gold trimmings, like the Taj Mahal or some Indian. I don't know. That's all I could picture, like some Indian palace, some Raja's palace, and the path was designed so that you could start the process of leaving your karma behind, even though most people didn't get it. That was the purpose. Peaceful music. You're supposed to prepare yourself for meditation. You're supposed to prepare yourself to be in the presence of the Master. That's your responsibility. And I don't think anybody got it. They all knew how to follow like sheep. That's why I used to go, bah, bah, when I was in that line. I had to follow, which I hated. I hated the rules. I hated wearing a colored t-shirt. Sifu didn't wear a colored t-shirt. He dressed how he wanted to dress. I dressed how he wanted us to dress, So I didn't like the rules, and I didn't like the, here is a herd mentality. They're used to being told what to do, and then just like sheep, very orderly. And now I understand that if it wasn't for this control, Sifu's micromanagement, if it wasn't for this control, if it wasn't for all the Shijes and Shisong Seva to help us, to guide us, it would have been chaos. Would have caused trouble in the neighborhood. Imagine, 5,000 people ascending on a peaceful neighborhood near a university usually. And it could be very disruptive, but we're organized from the time we got close, was organized, and I understand, but still, I would go back to my Taiwan mom and dad. They knew I hated it. Bah, like a good sheep, just follow along. Just follow along. So this winding path so that people could detox. And this process, it could be the same thing as getting into the hall. It was usually a gymnasium for the sports university or a big university. It was either the gymnasium or sometimes it was their theater. There was actually seats and a balcony. And anyway, whatever venue they could work out is where they went. But I was always, I used to meditate before we went to meditation, and I used to sit in the car with my mom and dad. They say, hey, no, you're not supposed to meditate out here. And I said, let me do it. And they said, okay, yeah, we know. Ha Young does what Ha Young wants to do. Even though Sifu discouraged people to meditate outside of a specific area. He also said, don't go in the wilderness. And then I talked to him, and I said, hey, go. Okay? No rules, okay? Music to my ears. But I always respected him, and I always prepared. And I saw so little around me that everybody wanted a piece of him. And I wanted nothing more than to enjoy his presence. I had no expectations, I had no questions, I had no desires, I had nothing that I wanted from him. And he knew that, and that's why I think I was one of his favorites from the very beginning. Plus, past life connections that we understood, being raised together as children at some point, in some place. And I never knew I felt like at times I was the elder brother, and at times I was the younger brother. I never knew, and it really didn't matter. Maybe we're the same age, same grade. I believe we're the same age. Close to it. He may be a few months younger or older than I am. But anyway, share, be happy, all my beloved.